What's up, everybody? Welcome to First Round Frenzy, and it is officially draft week. It is finally here.
Let's
Get your
go.
get your pancakes ready for Thursday, and make sure that you have access to draft day to watch that on the day as well. I'm Matt and Cole here. We're getting ready. This week, we've got two great episodes. We've got our sleepers today, and then on Wednesday or Thursday, haven't decided when we're going to release it, but we'll do our final alternating mock draft. So, some great content coming. And today should be fun with our sleepers at each position.
Yep, I'm excited. I think this is like the best part of the draft because we talk about how it's not really a top heavy draft this year. There's a lot of value all the way to pick like 75, pick 80, but even the late round guys that we're going to talk about today that aren't maybe like the first, second, third round guys, some fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh rounders. Those are where teams build championship rosters or with those guys. So it's an important part of the draft, and the interest always falls off on Saturday when day three starts. So it's good to be able to hit on some of these guys that are still going to be selected and still have some impact on their team. So I'm excited to get into some of these diamonds in the rough that we're going to be uncovering today.
Yeah, we talked about this last episode with the Rams and how they've been able to build a consistent contender every single year by drafting the best guys in these later rounds on day three. So if your team can get some of these guys, you guys may be able to compete as well. So we're going to go position by position here, quarterback through safety. We each chose a sleeper. We tried to keep it as, guys that have day three grades. And it's either we have them much higher than consensus, or we just believe that they're going to be better than the value that they currently have. So we can get right into it. We'll start with the quarterbacks. I'll go first with mine, who's probably maybe the least sleeper out of any of the guys here, just because, he could potentially go as high as the second round, just because of what quarterbacks do. But it's Kyle McCord out of Syracuse. You guys know I love him. He's my guy. You guys know that I love staking my name on a quarterback. And this year it is Kyle McCord. He's got a first round grade for me. He's in my top 25 prospects as my quarterback two. So I'm sticking my neck out there for this guy. He's got everything that you can want in a quarterback. I mean, seriously. I mean, he has probably the best arm out of any quarterback in this class. Extremely accurate, reads through his progressions extremely well. He doesn't have the athleticism as some of the other guys in this class that we talk about. But what makes Kyle McCord different is his processing ability, his ability to make NFL caliber throws, and his decision making. And I think that's what you look for when you go for these quarterbacks. I mean, Brock Purdy was my guy a few years ago, and that's what he does. He doesn't have the elite athleticism, but he does the good things really, really well. Tom Brady, etc. Those guys that don't have the elite athleticism, and what a lot of these Shedeur Sanders lovers are saying as well, right? He's
Yeah.
got elite processing ability, so he's going to be fine in the NFL. I like Kyle McCord a little bit better just because I like his zip, his arm strength, and his tight spiral just a little bit better. I think that's going to translate a lot better than Shedeur. But yeah, Kyle McCord's my guy.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You talked about the Brady, the Brock Purdy, and then if you think Kyle McCord will be this guy, that'd be a late round draft pick that maybe, finds himself a good footing with a team and a good career for himself in the NFL. That's what coaches love is being able to process, being able to read a defense, being able to be accurate and good timing with the football. It's not what media loves to see, which is athleticism, which is a big arm, which is a guy like Josh Allen that can run through a defender. No, the coaches want someone that plays the quarterback position smart, plays fundamentally sound with the football, makes right decisions. And yeah, Kyle McCord, that's all the check marks he has. And yeah, he doesn't have the other things that, the media wants to see and that makes good highlight videos, but a team's going to draft this guy and, rely on him to be a high level backup and maybe one day get the time to step up and show what he can do and run a system on his own. So
And
it's
yeah,
a good pull.
and I believe it was Kurt Warner that said it this week, is athleticism is more important than traditional QB play in college, where traditional QB play is more important than athleticism at the NFL level. So
Yeah.
obviously, I think in this class in general, it's going to come down to scheme fit for a majority of these guys. If you get into the right scheme in the right situation, you can succeed. We saw that with Russell Wilson, for example, coming out of college and immediately becoming the starter in Seattle as a third round pick. But I think Kyle McCord is a guy that is pretty scheme averse and can and play in a multitude of different places.
Yeah. So my quarterback I have is a guy I've liked for a while. I've watched him for a while because it's one of my favorite offenses in college. going back to the Mike Leach days with Mississippi State. That's Will Rogers. He was there at Mississippi State for a couple of years. He's been a 5-year starter at the SEC level and then at the Big Ten level this past season with Washington after transferring there. And he's kind of got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. No one's kind of talking about him right now. He looks to be a UDFA potentially, but he wants to keep his career and wants to keep the football dream alive. So hopefully a team throws a shot at him. It's kind of how Brock Purdy was when he came in to the draft the same way. No one thought he would get drafted. He ends up being Mr. Irrelevant and gets an opportunity with the 49ers. So this guy, we go back to 2021 with the air raid. It was an exciting offense. He finished third in the FBS with 4,700 passing yards. The next year, he was top 10 in yards and touchdowns. This guy, like every year, was leading in pass attempts because that's the air raid. You throw the ball every single play you're throwing the ball. But last year, when he transferred to Washington, he had a little bit of a down year because he moved into a more of a quick trigger RPO, like modern NFL style offense. So I liked seeing him get experience in both, the air raid and then a different like run first style offense and kind of see how he handled both of them. Unfortunately, the youth movement in Washington led to him getting benched in favor of Desmond Williams, who's going to be like, their go-to guy going forward and was the future for that team. And it wasn't going to be Will Rogers after obviously the 2024 season. So that kind of, was a big detriment to his draft stock, getting removed from the starting lineup at the end of the season in the bowl game. But I still have a lot of hope in Will Rogers because of what he's been able to show. And I like how he ran those two systems. And, again, it wasn't the best year in 2024, but I'm rooting on this guy to have a bounce back. He's got the chip on his shoulder. Somebody give him a shot and see what he can do when you bring him into training camp.
Yeah, I mean, if we go back to 21, 22 seasons that you were talking about at Mississippi State, this is a guy that's potentially a first round quarterback, right? I mean, he's thrown for over 30 touchdowns, less than 10 picks each year, takes care of the
Mhm.
football. He's got a strong arm. The question is, will he be able to transition into a pro offense, pro style
Yeah.
offense, right? Where he's not throwing the ball 600 times a season, right? It's not going to happen at the NFL level. That's just not how NFL offenses work. But we've seen in the past that he can be very capable as a passer of the football. We'll see what happens, but he's definitely a guy. He's got tons of experience, first of all, which we've seen NFL front offices love nowadays. But yeah, he's definitely someone to watch out for as a priority UDFA.
Yeah, because he's got experience. He's got high football IQ, accurate. Again, all the things you were talking about with or Kyle McCord.
Arm core, yeah.
But yeah, just a bad year and got to bounce back from it. So, but for my running back, this is a guy that's starting to get a lot more steam and building up his case among draft boards is Brashard Smith out of SMU. I like this guy. I think you're gonna go with a more like running back, a stronger back for your sleeper. But
Yep.
this is a guy who's a former wide receiver. He switched to running back. He reminds me a little bit of James Cook in a way, just in terms of what he can do out of the backfield. He had over 1,000 or 1,300 rushing yards his first year as like a full running back this past season, but then over his career had over 1,000 career receiving yards as well. So it's an interesting, fit. He had a 4.39 40-yard dash. He brings a lot of juice to the table, a lot of big plays ability. I think he's probably going to be a fifth round guy, but like the Vikings, I mean, the Bills, like we just talked about, James Cook, they might not, extend him in Buffalo. Maybe you bring in Rashard Smith into that locker room. Maybe some receiving ability, some home run ability. But I think this guy, when he hits that second gear, you really see that 4.3 40 shine. And then again, former wide receiver, so he's got the receiving ability out of the backfield.
Yeah. You guys know I love Rashard Smith as well. He was in my top 10 when we did our top 10 running backs episode a few weeks ago. Converted wide receiver. I think the receiving part of the game is becoming so important. And I think one thing that you didn't really touch on is his blocking ability. He's actually a
Oh yeah,
very, very capable blocker in the run game and in the pass game. So he's a guy that's extremely versatile that can get the job done.
yeah. He's got return ability too. He can be a starting punter, kick returner right out of the gate.
Yeah. So really good guy that and that the special teams ability could get him drafted earlier than expected.
Yeah,
So yeah, as you mentioned, going with a little bit of a stronger, more power focused back, and that's Raheem Sanders, 6 foot, 230 pounds, ran a 4.46 40 at that size, which is ridiculous. He's currently consensus running back 18 and getting picked right around the 180s. From what I've seen, I currently have him as RB9 on my board and in the top 100. And I think people are forgetting what kind of running back this guy can be. after his time in Arkansas. I mean, the guy was a beast. Like when we're looking back to his 2022 season, he ran for 1,400 yards. I mean, he is a workhorse. He can be a three down back in the NFL. He had limited carries last year due to injury, only 62 carries for 209 yards. But this year, kind of got back in a full swing. Still not full. He only had 183 carries in this South Carolina offense after transferring, 881 yards and 11 touchdowns. What I love about Raheem is he's a very well-rounded back, right? He's a guy that if you
Definitely.
get into the right system in the NFL, he can rush for 1,000 yards, but he can also make catches and catch and run for over 500 yards. He has the receiving ability. He's got the size and the technique to be a very capable blocker. So the question is, can he stay healthy? And does he have the elusiveness to be able to break away from NFL caliber defenders? I think those are the two question marks. And if he's a guy that's currently projected to go in round 5 or round 6, like it's looking like, I mean, I don't think there's any question that you guys should be able to take a hit on him in round 4 or early round 5 and potentially get a big time 3 down starting running back.
Yeah, and everyone talks a lot about his size, but the other thing, even like with his size, he has the ability to hit some big plays as well. I mean, he had 21 carries of 10 plus yards. He's had a couple of carries of 15, 20 plus yards. So even for a big guy, once he gets rumbling and gets off some tackles and gets into space, he can kind of hit that second gear and turn, big plays or small carries into big plays once he breaks off defenders and hits that second gear. So that's another hidden trait that people aren't really
Yeah.
talking about into this game that teams are going to kind of keep an eye on once they start looking at that, sleeper running back
Yeah, and I
option.
think that's one of the things that we're going to see a lot, especially with this running back class, is because there are so many draftable running backs this year that guys like Raheem Sanders and like Brashard Smith are kind of going to get pushed under the rug a little bit and kind of forgotten about, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm another guy that I was considering here is LaQuint Allen, who's more similar to Brashard Smith, who's more of a pass catcher and blocking running back, and he's a guy that could potentially be a 3 down back at the NFL. He was extremely good at Syracuse this past season. So I think there's going to be a lot of guys that kind of get swept under the rug a little bit, but could be very capable running backs to the next level. Now we move into wide receivers, and this is my first real sleeper here. Is I feel like nobody's talking about this guy, and it's Isaiah Nayer out of Nebraska. Now this is a guy that has transferred twice now, played his first 2 seasons at Wyoming, transferred to Texas last season, where he only had 1 reception for 14 yards. Struggled to get into that offense with, I mean, let's be honest, a lot
Yeah,
of
loaded
really
room. Yeah.
talented wide receivers. So he ended up transferring again, going to Nebraska, and he had his second best year of his college career. Kind of got back into the swing of things. 34 receptions for 455 yards and 5 touchdowns. His best season being his sophomore year at Wyoming, 44 for 878 and 12. This is a guy that he ran a 4.4 flat 40 at 6'4", 220 pounds. This guy is a physical beast, right? He's got an insanely long wingspan. He's got really good athleticism, and he's got great size. Has the perfect trifecta of traits here, right? You bring him out there, he's a natural separator with his agility and his acceleration ability. He can pluck balls outside of a normal catch radius, right? I think for me, the biggest thing that he needs to do is he needs to work on his route running, just get that down a little bit better, get a little bit more technique involved, and then use his physicality more earlier
Yeah.
in the route process. Those are the two things where he has all the natural traits to get the job done. And we've seen flashes of it in the film, right? But if he can these are very simple fixes at the next level, right?
Yep.
Obviously, we need to see him actually develop it. But if he gets into an offense that really takes the time to say, here, this is what you need to do, he can be a very dangerous receiver, even if it's just as a red zone threat with his size. But he had the sky's the limit for this guy's potential. I currently have him as a 3rd round grade, currently projected to go in the 5th or 6th round. Um, so extreme value as a physical receiver in this class.
Yeah, and definitely like if he lands with a team and a wide receiver coach that can get him to use that physicality more in his game, because at 6'4", 218, that's insane size and like can push up to 220 once he gets in the weight room and throughout the offseason. Like playing weight, if he gets up in the 220s by the time the season comes around, he's got the size at 6'4", the arm length is ridiculous. This guy had a 9.98 RAS score too, which is
Yeah,
absolutely insane. That's like the eighth best ever by a wide receiver on the
ridiculous.
RAS score. So he definitely needs a lot more buzz just because of the athleticism and the size that he brings to the table. And the other things, like you said, are easy to teach in the game. You get him with a strong wide receiver coach or a strong offensive coordinator that can teach him to use his size, teach him to be aggressive at the point of attack, and in and out of his routes. He could be a steal. And again, I think third round, like if a lot of wide receivers go off the board day two, late third round, early fourth round, he can try to elevate his stock a little bit more depending on how the rest of the wide receiver class falls.
100%.
So my wide receiver is going to be drafted a lot later, and it's another transfer guy. He started at Middle Tennessee State, went to Virginia Tech, and he's definitely not as big as Isaiah is, but Jalen Lane, a guy that is, the ideal slot, the ideal gadget player. I love these kind of guys in an offense. He's fearless with the ball in his hands, even though he's a little bit undersized. He adds some return value, all the things you want to see. He had 1,000 yards over the past 2 seasons with 8 touchdowns, and he shined at the combine, a 4.3 440-yard dash. He had an 11-inch broad jump, so he's explosive. I already talked about you can put him in the backfield. Teams like the Bears, maybe even the Giants, an exciting play caller where you can move him around the formation. This would be some great sixth, seventh round value late in the draft in a guy like Jalen Lane.
Yeah, I feel like the Virginia Tech guys are kind of going under the radar. Both Jalen Lane and Daquan Felton were talked about a lot
Yeah.
at the beginning of the process as guys that could end up being, late day two guys, early day three guys. And I think a lot of these guys, like Isaiah Nair, who have kind of come out of the shadows and kind of taken over that hype, right? We're looking at guys like Ty Felton out of Maryland, Isaac Tesla out of Arkansas, Keandre Lambert Smith out of Auburn. Like there's just guys that have kind of come out of nowhere and kind of taken all the hype away from these guys. But as you mentioned, uh, uh Jalen Lane, he's a guy that is going to be could be extremely valuable at the next level just because of his versatility, his ability to be do things that other wide receivers can't. Right. I think we talked about it with the Denver Broncos, how they're looking for a gadget guy. If they end up going with Omari and Hampton with their first round pick instead of Luther Burden, like I had them in the mock drafts earlier, I mean, is this a guy that they could potentially go after later in the draft and potentially be that gadget guy that they're looking for at wide receiver? I mean, there is definitely a place in the NFL for a guy like Jalen Lane.
Yeah, and then the versatility and the special teams value is going to get this guy drafted.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, going back to 2021, where he had his best season, he had 295 punt return yards, averaged 15 and a half yards per punt return, plus 21.9 yards on a kick return. And then this past season, he kind of got back into it, had 24 returns for 245 on punts and had a touchdown as well. I mean, this guy, he can move in traffic, he can cut in a phone booth and all the
yeah,
things you want in a punt returner and be able to make a play. And that's going to get guys drafted, especially later in the round and what teams are looking forward to. Someone that can bring added value to the entire team, not just what he can do on offense.
100%.
All right, so now my tight end, I'm going to go, speaking of guys that can do it all on offense, let's go with Jalen
Oh
Connors,
yeah.
another Jalen on my list out of Texas Tech. I think this guy is the second coming, Matt, of Taysom Hill. There's all the
Ooh.
talk of Tyler Warren in the first round, what you can do with a guy like Tyler Warren. If you're a team that misses out, maybe like the Colts or the Chargers on a tight end, maybe the Bears who want a guy like Tyler Warren with the 10th overall pick, but if a team that pivots on Tyler Warren in the first round, I think you're very comfortable coming in on day three and getting Jalen Connors to really play that same role. I mean, quite literally, this guy was a former high school quarterback. He moved to tight end, transferred to Texas Tech in 2024. I mean, he has 11 career receiving touchdowns, three career rushing touchdowns. He had a passing touchdown last year at Texas Tech. You can put him all over the field. You can put him in the backfield. You can put him out wide. You can put him in the slot. You can put him in line. You can block. Like this guy literally can do it all. I don't know why he's being thought of as a projected day three pick, but if I come around on day three and he's on the board, I'm taking him 9 out of 10 times. If I got a coordinator like Kyle Shanahan, a coordinator or a coach like Kyle Shanahan, an offensive play caller like Ben Johnson, Mike McDaniel, any of those guys can work wonders with a guy like this. Even Sean Payton, maybe he wants another Taysom Hill in Denver. So Jalen Connors is a late round value at the tight end position.
Yeah, I really like Jalen. And one of the things I like about him is you kind of know what you're going to get out of him. He's been extremely consistent. throughout his college career. After his second 2 years at Arizona State, when he finally became really a part of the offense, 30 plus receptions, 360 plus receiving yards, all right around the same. Then you transfer to Texas Tech for your senior year, 30 receptions, 320 yards, 5 touchdowns, right? You know exactly what you're getting out of this guy. He averaged over 10 yards per reception in each of those years. So you know exactly what you're going to get out of a guy like Jalen Conyers, which is what you want to see when you're an offensive coordinator and you're going out there and you want to see and you want to draft a guy that's going to make an impact. You want to know exactly what they're going to do. And Jalen Conyers through two different offenses, two different systems, and he's done the exact same thing. So you know exactly the kind of guy
Yep.
that we're getting. So let's move on to my guy. And my guy is Joshua Simon out of South Carolina. I originally had Mitchell Evans in here, but I wanted to go a little bit deeper into this, right? And
Yeah.
Joshua Simon's a guy who's really not talked about at all during this entire process. Um, he's played what 7 years in college football now. I think he's played a lot of football. All right, his first season was 2019, where he put up 30 receptions for 430 yards. He's now in 2024, put up 40 receptions and 519 yards and 7 touchdowns. This guy is an absolute beast. Athletically, he's great. He ran a 4.65 40, which I believe was the second fastest among tight ends at the combine. 38 vert, 10.4 broad, extremely athletic. What I like about him a lot is his catch radius is ridiculous. He's got long arms, great wingspan, good big sized hands, and he's got a great frame. He's physically imposing. You can line him up in the slot or off the line of scrimmage, and he's a guy that's a very capable blocker in the run game as well. So he's a very versatile guy. He's currently projected to go in like round 6 right now. I think he's a guy that can go early day 3. I don't think he's going to break into day 2. I think there's too much talent at the tight end position this year to be able to do that kind of jump. But he's a guy that you can get in that early to mid day 3 section that could potentially high upside of being an NFL starting tight end.
Yeah, I mean, this guy's got enormous hands too. Like you talked about the catch radius, like 10 and an eighth inch hands is ridiculous for a guy who's 6'4", 239. I wonder if he can add some more weight potentially as well and, add that into his game, but he's not quite as versatile as, Jalen Conyers is, but he's still a guy that can play inline, he can block, and also, a vertical seam threat in the slot as well. So yeah, agreed. Another one that can potentially do some damage at that tight end position.
Yep. All right, so let's move over to the offensive line. We've got our offensive tackle, and for me, I went Logan Brown out of Kansas.
Hmm.
He's a guy that I think has kind of been lost in the shuffle a little bit. I think there's, we talk about some of the smaller school guys like a Carson Vincent, right? And then we talk about the big school guys like a, or small school like Charles Grant as well from small school as well.
Yeah.
And they're kind of jumping over Logan Brown a little bit throughout this process. But Logan Brown, he's great. 6'6", 311 pounds, extremely athletic, 5'18", 40-yard dash, which is great for his size. 7.75 3 cone, 4.51 shuttle, which is really good for the position there. And he's a guy, he's I believe he's a 4 year starter in college football. He started out in 2019 as well, where he redshirted. So he's another older prospect here. He played 7 games in 2020 with Wisconsin before he ended up transferring in 2023 to Kansas. He's a guy that can play on either side of the offensive line, left tackle or right tackle, and he is a great pass protector. I think he's a guy that could potentially sneak into round 3 if we see a run of offensive tackles early on day 2. But otherwise, I think he's probably a round 4 value right now, is what I'm thinking. But he's got the potential to be a high upside starter in the NFL.
Yeah, I think like the late day 2 guys of this tackle position are going to be really good values. The Logan Brown, Charles Grant, Ozzie Trapilo, even Marcus Mimbo, you can throw into that. But I looked at, the late day 3 guys. Caleb Rogers came to my mind out of Texas Tech, but the guy I'm going to go with as the spotlight here is going to be John Williams, a potential UDFA, high priority guy, 7th round guy. He started every game the past 2 seasons at Cincinnati at left tackle, only allowed 3 total sacks in that span, but he's a little undersized. And, it's
Okay.
not like the normal guys we're talking about at the tackle position, I'm not talking about arm length by any means. He definitely has the arm length to play tackle at the next level. He never quite used the arm length to his advantage from what I was watching, but I think with the size, he's another guy you can move inside and put him at left guard, have some left tackle option potentially, depending on the team that lands him and where they want to put him. But he played in a very balanced offense. He had 2,000-yard rushers the past 2 seasons at Cincinnati while, being serviceable in the passing game, playing on the blind side. This guy's also an aerospace engineering major, so ridiculously smart. You don't see that
Ridiculous.
out of football players.
Yep.
So as a late round, seventh round priority UDFA, you can bring him in, kind of just teach him the offense. He'll pick it up really quickly because he's played in a balanced offense. Like I said, he's ridiculously smart, just as a person in general. And it's fun. You can put him at guard, you can put him at tackle. He's productive at either one. So you just play with his size a little bit, play with his abilities, so you want to put him. That's enticing for an offensive play caller as well.
Yeah, and I think this offensive tackle group is so interesting because we've seen so many people say that they're going to transition to the interior of the offensive line, right? And that's kind of caused a huge gap between the top half of this offensive tackle class and then those next guys, right? We
Yeah.
talk about how it kind of cuts off an offensive tackle 5'6" with Aronte Ursery and Josh Connerly. Then there's a big gap, and then you've got the Ozzie Trapillos, Logan Browns, John Williams, Charles Grants, etc. Right?
Yeah.
So you got to hit on one of these guys. There could be a lot of talent here. We don't know. We'll see what happens. But you got to hit on these guys in the late day two range, and you could potentially get an NFL starter out of them. So it'll be really
Mhm.
interesting to see how these teams attack this offensive tackle class.
Definitely. So now for the interior, I wanted to maybe go with another priority UDFA seventh round guy. I was looking at some different options, and a guy that I like and have been really keen on the last couple of days has been Addison West. When I've been looking into some priority UDFA targets out of Western Michigan. I mean, started 37 games. He played all three interior positions, didn't allow a single sack over the last 2 seasons combined. So Addison West, I like his game, but I'm gonna go with not like my late round UDFA guys. I want to go a little earlier on some like late day two guy, and that's Jackson Slater out of Sacramento State, another small school guy, and another guy who allowed 0 sacks over the last 2 seasons while playing 22 total games. He built an impressive career starting at that left guard spot. Um, he's great pulling, and he's going to work great in a or a zone offense. So zone run schemes and and even maybe moving at center. Even the
Okay.
bowl weekend, they try to give him some ability at center and run a zone run offense. They like to pull their centers and guards so he can adapt to either position, and it works with his skill set. The worry is the competition level. Is he going to be able to start year one against NFL talent after coming from the FCS? That's always going to be an issue with FCS players and a concern you have to work out. But overall, there's high upside for this guy. He can still work on a little bit of stuff and develop maybe for a year before you start, putting him into the lineup. But overall, I mean, I've liked what I've seen out of him, and it seems like a lot of people feel the same way about him.
Yeah, I love Jackson Slater. He's also one of my favorite prospects in this class. And I just love this interior O line class in general. I've got eight
Mhm.
or nine in my top 100 players right now. I really like what I see out of this. Jackson Slater's a guy that I really like. Clay Webb, Drew Kendall out of Boston College, Marcus Weir out of Montana State. But the guy I went with is Luke Newman out of Michigan State. He started every single game over the last 4 years for this Michigan State squad, who has had some great running backs during that time period, right? And we're
Yeah.
talking about this. He's a guy that's been a centerpiece of that offensive line. They have built around him. He's a guy that no injury concerns, great leadership ability, great inline blocker. He's a guy that can pull as well. He's extremely athletic, and he's a guy that's being slept on a lot. He's currently consensus interior offensive line 24, right? And he's currently projected, what is it, 249? So in the seventh round of the NFL draft, or yeah, seventh round of the NFL draft, he's projected to go right now. That's ridiculous in my opinion. When you're looking at a guy that's 4 year starter, extremely productive, has blocked for a bunch of really high quality NFL running backs now. I see no reason why he can't be a starter at the next level and potentially a day one starter in the next level. So really like what I saw out of Luke Newman, and he's a guy definitely to watch out for during training camp this year.
Yeah, and another late round guy that I don't understand what the process has been, what the hiccups been with him. But
Yep.
Hayden Conner out of Texas at left
Oh yeah.
guard, like another guy who's been there starting for a long time. He's a menace in the run game. He allowed 0 sacks this past season. I don't know why he's not getting a lot more buzz than he's currently getting because he's another guy that's like seventh round UDFA guy. And I looked into him, I was like, what am I missing here? What is
I
everyone
think
else
the
missing here?
I think the big thing is we're seeing a lot of these offensive tackles switch over to interior offensive line, and that's getting all the headlines, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we're talking about Gray Zabel, obviously, Donovan Jackson, even though he's a guard, transition to tackle now back to guard, he's one of those guys. Wyatt Mila, Marcus Embo, Jonas Avanaya, you know, even Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks could be
Yeah.
switching over to guard. So a lot of these other guys that could potentially be late day 2, early day 3 guys are now being pushed and pushed
Mhm.
and pushed, and that's kind of hurting their stock right now. But I'm looking at, I mean, all the way to my interior like 15, 16, 17 that could be starters in the NFL. So
Yeah.
definitely watch out for this interior group. All right, so now let's move over to the defensive side of the ball, and this is an interesting group of guys. We're going to start with edge rusher, and for me, I went Ahmad Hassanayan out of Boise State, and this is a guy that I do not understand why he is not getting more hype than he is. I mean, I first started like really watching him at the Shrine Bowl. I was watching those defensive line drills, and he was absolutely dominating every single offensive lineman that they put him up against on the edge. He's extremely quick. He's got great bend. He's got great size. He's 6'3, 272 out of Cairo, Egypt, by the way. International guy. He's a beast. The last 2 seasons at Boise State, 53 tackles, 12 and a half sacks, 48 tackles, 9.5 sacks. Extremely productive in both the run game and the pass rush. He sets a great edge. I mean, there's no question in my mind that this guy can be productive at the next level and be a high quality edge rusher.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it, it looked like he had a 9 game sack streak in
Yeah,
2023.
yeah,
I mean,
he's ridiculous.
consistently productive. Yeah. So, wow. Yeah, it's ridiculous. Okay. I mean, I wonder if, so he's from Egypt. I wonder if you get the International Pathway Program spot if he goes undrafted. Like, you get the free spot on the, I know the Lions like using that. So last year
Yeah.
and a couple of years before, since they started using that, trying to incentivize getting some International Pathway guys in there. I wonder if he'll get approval for that. I know the Bears got Tory Taylor, I think, approved for it during training camp, even though he went to Iowa and even though he's Australian. So
Yep.
I wonder that could be a good option if you can use that spot on him and get him on the roster, consistently productive guy at the college level. So that'd be a good option. I got Quay Robinson as my
Ooh, okay.
defensive
I've
end
been hearing a
guy.
lot about him recently.
I know I was not even on him, and the guy from
Yeah.
Alabama at an edge rusher was surprising that I didn't hear anything about him. And all of a sudden, Jordan Schultz dropped a bomb that he was meeting with the Lions. He already met with
Yep.
the Panthers. He had an upcoming visit with the Chiefs and the Falcons. And I was like, all of a sudden, I looked at it, he's 6'4", 243. He had 4 sacks in 9 games, and I was like, oh, what? Like you really from a defensive lineman from Alabama, it's weird not to hear about a guy until late in the process like this. So I looked more into him. He had a season-ending elbow injury. Prior to that injury, he was leading the team in sacks. The 4 sacks in 9 games. His first year really as a starter
Yep.
in 2024. And what caught my eye again with these late round guys, he had 127 special team snaps in 2024 and 246 defensive snaps before going down to injury. So he's got special teams ability. He's already done it, and being at Alabama, it's not like he was their top edge rusher and he refused to only, not play anything other than edge rusher and didn't want to play special teams. He sought work, he sought going out on special teams and getting on the field and making an impact any way he could. And it makes sense now seeing why teams like the Lions, the Chiefs, the Falcons are interested in a guy like this as, an early fourth round selection.
I was gonna say, you just mentioned, he's Alabama's top edge rusher, willing to go out there, do the dirty work on special teams. That sounds like a Dan Campbell kind of guy. He's gonna go round 4, 5, maybe even 6 if he drops to that point, and he's gonna be a Dan Campbell guy that just comes out there and absolutely balls out for his team. So,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think again, this is just kind of part of the process, right? Where this edge group is one of the deepest edge groups we've seen in a long time. It's not just top end talent. There's talent all the way through. And Robinson just kind of fell through the cracks. And, here he is. He could be a very productive guy. He's extremely athletic, good frame, good bend. I mean, he's really talented guy.
Yeah, it makes sense. The process, wasn't going as strong as that was his first year starting, and then he misses the rest of the year due to injury. So it's hard to really project how he's going to bounce back and be at that same kind of level he was that first 9 games. So it's a risk you take, but it's a risk and a high reward if it pays off because of the guy that he seems to be on the field. But on the interior, I got Jamari Caldwell out of Oregon. The Oregon defensive line, kind of had some dogs on that defensive line, and he's another one where he's not like Derek Harmon. He's not like a pass rushing guy, but at the same time, Harmon and Caldwell both were really strong against the run. Caldwell was more of the run stuffing nose tackle of that Ducks defense at 6'2", 322 pounds. So he's not going to offer you a lot in the pass rush department, but he did have 6.5 sacks in 2023, even though it went down and dropped to 0 in 2024. But I mean, he still had 5 tackles for a loss, 29 tackles. A lot of high reports from him at the Senior Bowl. He looked fluid. His speed, his sideline to sideline ability shows up on the tape. So he's a guy that could get some interest, and teams that are looking into Derek Harmon might have also seen him making some plays while watching the same game film.
Yeah. And Jamari Conwell is a guy that I've been hearing a lot over the entire process where, some people are talking about him as a day two guy and other people are like, no, no, he's a good value, but he's gonna go day three. Just I think there is a gap between Derek
Hmm.
Harmon's ability and Jamari Caldwell, but
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
no
for sure.
question what Jamari Caldwell brought to that Oregon defense, right? He was a key piece in that defensive front. And if you're a team that's looking for that specific kind of player, right? Just sit in the middle and be a roadblock.
Hmm.
Go out and get Jamari Caldwell because he is going to be a key contributor.
Definitely.
For me, I went with a guy actually very similar to you that has a teammate in the same position that's getting higher draft buzz, and that's Vernon Broughton out of Texas. Now, obviously, Alfred Collins is the guy that's kind of getting all the hype in the interior defensive line for Texas, but Vernon, he's a beast. He really is. I was watching his tape the other day. He's kind of a guy that, I got too late, but 2024, 39 tackles, 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He's a guy that kind of goes all over the place. He's got a wicked spin move. All right. 6'4, 305. Absolute behemoth of a man up front. There are a few other guys that I could have talked about here, right? I mean, I have Ty Robinson much higher than most. I like CJ West out of Indiana, Jordan Phillips out of Maryland, but I think something about Vernon Broughton just kind of caught my eye when I was watching the tape and thought this is a guy that can be an impact starter who's probably going to go late round 4, early round 5 that could potentially be a day 2 talent. So really like what I saw out of him when I watched it. Good pass rusher, good run defender. He's got great play recognition skills, and he's a guy that can recover very well and go out and get a runner that gets to the outside. He's able to chase him down and get him. So extremely athletic as well.
Yeah, and just pulling it up, it looks like he's kind of like a Quay Robinson guy, where he was at a late breakthrough in 2024, but unlike Robinson, he was able to start 15 of the 16 games. Looking at it, he's got elite length and wingspan,
Yeah.
so that'll definitely be enticing as well. So we'll see what it is. 310 is interesting, or like get that 310. Once you get below like 315 is interesting to see how a team views you as a defensive tackle. You're not right at
Yep.
that 320 run stuffing guy, but also you're a 310 kind of athletic guy that can get after the passer, and that's kind of the D tackles we're seeing in this group get a lot of buzz. So we'll see what happens with Vernon Broughton out of Texas.
Yep. All right, so let's move to the linebacker position. And well, let's just say I like both of the guys on the screen right here, both your guy and the guy that I end up choosing. And just a little bit of what's it called, foreshadowing for later. These West Coast linebackers are beasts. We love
Yeah,
Carson Schwessinger, obviously. For me, I went with the cow man, Teddy Buchanan. This guy had an insane senior season. 114 tackles, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. This guy did everything for this Cal defense. He has great sideline to sideline ability. He's a very, very good tackler. He can rush the passer. He's a good hybrid player. Nothing like a Jihad Campbell or a Jalen Walker, but he's
right.
a guy that times his runs well, gets through the A or B gap very nicely. And he's also a guy that can drop into coverage and make some plays there. He didn't really have to do that as much his senior season, but if you look back, 2023, he had 3 picks. 2022, he had 3 picks. 2021, he had 2 picks. So his tackling numbers went down as he kind of came away from the box a little bit more in those early years, but in senior year, he was in the box, being a run stopper, getting to the quarterback. So throughout his college career, we've seen that he can do a little bit of everything, and he's a guy that can translate really well to the next level.
Yeah, and I like this linebacker class once you start getting into it. I think talking about what's his name? Sean Dolik. I
Yep.
think that's
Out
kind
of
of out of
Buffalo.
Buffalo. I
Yeah.
think that's kind of cheating at this point to talk about him because everyone else is catching on to him. And
Yep.
I know Bucky,
I was thinking
or
about
not
him too.
Bucky, Brian Baldinger just did like a great video, Baldy at NFL Network breaking down his tape. But I like some of these teammates coming into it. Nick Martin, Colin Oliver
Yep.
out of Oklahoma State, and then you talked about Carson Schlesinger, and then my guy on the screen, Kane Medrano. I have mocked Medrano like every single time to the Bears. I'm like so in on this guy. He's one of my draft crushes as a late round guy. He had 72 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 3 forced fumbles in 2024 alone. Like all over the field, all over the ball, while playing with Carson Schlesinger, who's like a potential first round talent or early day two talent. He's still playing right next to that guy. But really is what's giving him the push right now for Kane Medrano is the 4.46 40-yard dash, the fastest among all the linebackers at the combine, and the special teams value again with this guy. 115 special team snaps while starting all 12 games as the will linebacker for the Bruins defense. He has a lot of high upside. You can put him on the field on day one as a special teamer, as like a linebacker three, and then develop him to potentially be like your starting will with the speed he has and like a defensive coordinator. Putting him like with the 49ers with Robert Saleh or putting him with the Colts with their defensive coordinator, Lou Amarillo. That both guys like speed linebackers and guys that can rush the passer from the linebacker position and also drop into coverage. Came and Drano makes a lot of sense to fill the needs for some of those teams.
And Femi Oladejo, the edge rusher out of UCLA, he was on NFL Network the other day doing Path to the Draft, and they asked him about Carson Schlesinger and what it's like, um, you know, having a teammate to go through this process, right? And he
Yeah,
was like, Carson's great, but there are other guys on this team that are going to be impact starters at the next level. I guarantee you he was talking about Cam Madrano because he
definitely.
is an absolute beast. Loved watching his tape. Might be he's closer to Carson Schlesinger than people think. I love Carson. He's a great player, but Kane Madrano can have just as much of an impact in a different way than Carson. We can have just as much of an impact to an NFL defense.
For sure. So now for the cornerback position, I didn't want to go with an outside guy. Like this whole list, I kind of like wanted to be weird with all my
Yeah.
picks, but also like make them make sense in the same way. So I'm not going to go with an outside corner like you probably will. I'm going with a slot corner in Jordan Hancock out of Ohio State. This guy had incredible explosive numbers at the Ohio State Pro Day, and a lot of people were in attendance for that because of the amount of defenders they had at that event. But he started 17 games over the last 2 seasons, 3 interceptions, 12 pass deflections. He got a pick six. He had 4 forced fumbles out of that nickel spot. They moved him at safety a little bit, so it's kind of like a tweener,
Yep.
corner safety. But I think, given his size, his best playing in the slot, this is like a Kyler Gordon of this year's class. We just saw Kyler Gordon get a huge amount of money from the Chicago Bears being the highest paid nickel, and the nickel market in general skyrocketed this past season. I mean, everyone's finally valuing this position of what it is because it's not your typical corner. Like these
You
guys are
got
doing
a
the
bear into
dirty
the Jets
work.
at 7. Come on. You know it. You know I want it.
These guys are doing the dirty work. These nickel corners, they play against the run. They're gritty. You are blown away by them on the tape because they don't look like, size wise, they should be making the plays they're making against running backs and tight ends. So Jordan Hancock, I think, could fill that role for a lot of teams as well at great value, where you don't have to pay, a top paid nickel corner for a while.
And yeah, Jordan Hancock, he obviously did a great job. I feel like there's been a lot of question marks around the, other than Caleb Downs, around that Ohio State secondary.
Hmm.
Right. I feel like a lot of guys like Denzel Burke is in this process and nobody's talking about him. I forget how to pronounce his name, but the guy that dropped out, Igbenogmanson or whatever, outside corner out of Ohio State, he ended up dropping out of the process and is going back to school next year. But I feel like that Ohio State secondary is kind of a under the radar kind of group because I was thinking about
Yeah.
Denzel Burke. Some other guys I was thinking about, Caleb Ransaw out of Tulane, really
Hmm.
interesting guy. I feel like there are a lot of sleepers in this cornerback class just because there's not much top end talent. After you get past corner like 6, probably. It's all about just finding the diamond in the rough here. And for me, I went with a guy that is a physical beast, and that's Zoff Frazier out of
Yeah.
UTS. I mean, this guy, 6'3", 185 pounds, big press man outside corner. He absolutely dominated on tape. Right. He's a guy that 6 interceptions this year, 9 passes defended. I mean, he is a beast. And I think if put into the right situation, he can be a lockdown outside corner. I mean, extremely athletic, 4.36, 40-yard dash, extremely quick at that size. Give me a break. He is going to dominate. 10.6 broad, 36 and a half vert, 4.26 shuttle. I mean, this guy, I think he's probably going to go late round 4, early round 5. I think he's a day 2 talent, no question. I think he can be a starter at the next level day 1 if necessary.
Yeah, and I love like tall, lanky corners. I know the guys at A to Z Sports have been, slamming their hands on the table for Zoff Frazier for like the entire process. So to me, he doesn't seem like a sleeper guy from just the guy what I've been hearing everyone else talking about him. But 32, basically 33-inch arm length, and then at the height at 6'3", like he has the size and length to be able to handle guys like Devontae Adams at the next level and go up against in contested catch situations against some of the bigger wide receivers and taller wide receivers in the league. So that's definitely going to give him some incentive to get in it. And he's scrappy. I mean, he fits run blocks really
Oh, yeah.
well on the outside, and he can make some plays in open space. So I think a lot of teams are going to be interested in adding a guy like that just because of all the intangibles he brings to a locker room.
All right, so let us move on to the final position, and that is going to be the safety position. And this is another one. I think the entire secondary in general, where once you get it past that top 5 or 6 guys, it's kind of a crapshoot of who do you want, who fits your scheme, what kind of safety do you want? Do you want a ball hawk? Do you want a nickel? Do you want just a hard hitter? What do you want in this position?
Mhm.
And for me, I went with a guy out of Nevada, Kitten Crawford. Texas transfer,
Okay.
comes in Nevada, absolutely dominates. First of all, 6 passes defended, 2 interceptions, a forced fumble, 76 total tackles. He's a guy that I think can come in and make an impact. Maybe not a day 1 starter. He's a little undersized at 5'11", 206, which, might be a little bit of a question mark. It might be why he's kind of in that day 3 conversation. But he's extremely athletic, 4.41 40, 10.8 broad, 41 and a half vert, first of all. Ridiculous. He's also very strong. 18 bench press reps is no slag at the safety position either. I really like his sideline to sideline ability, his ability to get down into the box and make plays as well. I think he's probably, again, projected as that early to mid day 3 range. And you could be getting a late day 2 value if you end up going to get him. Because I think with a little bit of development and a little bit of technique tweaking at the next level with some NFL coaching, he can be a starter in the next level.
Yeah, I mean, his combine numbers are off the charts. He looks really good athletically. He looks like he's technically sound as well in the run game, can come down and make some plays in that area. I'm going to go with a Penn State guy, and I'm not going with Kevin Winston because, again, he's like the number 3 safety in the class.
Yeah.
Once you get past the Malachi Starks and Nicky Manwaris of the world in this year's class, but his teammate at Penn State was Jalen Reed. And I love that Penn State defense. I have for a while. I think Anthony Poindexter is one of the better assistant coaches
Yep.
in college football because of the talent he's produced. I mean, we're talking about Jaquan Brisker, we're talking about Jair Brown. He consistently is getting guys at that safety position coming into the league, and having 2 come into the draft this year out of Penn State is incredible. And even though he started all 16 games next to Kevin Winston, who's getting all the buzz, he's the one that led this team in tackles with 98 tackles. He had 2.5 sacks. He had 3 interceptions, 3 pass deflections, was all over the field. And he's a very downhill style safety. And it reminds me of what Jaquan Brisker was, in that same defense when Poindexter was working with him, where he's
Yep.
relentless against the run. You just force him down the field and making plays, in that, hitting the gap from the safety position. You don't really know what he's going to do pre-snap, and being able to move him around that way helps, the defense and keep offenses off balance. He does struggle a little bit with open field tackling when he's not downfield, and when he has to kind of like break down and like tackle a shifty guy in space. But overall, like the Giants have done a lot of work on him. The Eagles are doing a lot of work on him. So it seems like some NFC East teams are potentially interested in adding him to their room as, a fourth or fifth round guy.
Now, well, I'll tell you, if you're a team that needs a safety, and you want to wait until the third day three,
You
Jets,
absolutely can. Yeah.
Jets, Jets need multiple safeties. This is the way to go. I mean, you mentioned Jalen Reed, Billy Bowman Jr., Tim Crawford, as I mentioned, Shamari Simmons out of Arizona State, Jonas Sanker, Dan Jackson, RJ Mickens. There's a plethora of guys here. JJ Roberts and Maxon Hook out of group of five schools, right? There's
Yeah.
so much under the radar talent. These guys might not end up being anything, but there's so much potential within this group. They're just not the high end places. So this is definitely the draft to need a safety late round. So
Right.
that is it for our sleepers. I'm sure there are plenty of more that we could have talked about, but this show can't be 5 hours long. So we're going to be ending it there. This is our final positional talks of the NFL draft. On Wednesday or Thursday, we will be having our final alternating mock draft come out for round one, which should be exciting. And yeah, we're excited for it. So enjoy draft week, enjoy the process, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, excited.